There are some truly evil people in this world, hate-filled monsters who seek only to cause pain and suffering. They hate you based on what you look like, on what your identity is. How dare these people? Well, there's good news, my friends. The DC police are on it. In this story from the Daily Mail, DC police investigate vandalism of Bernie Sanders' mural as a hate crime after it was defaced with alt-right Pepe the Frog. This is a real story. Okay, it's true that there are nasty people who hate you just for who you are. Fine, but sorry, man. I'm going to enjoy covering this next segment. Let me just show you what's going on. The vandalism of a mural of Bernie Sanders in Washington, D.C. that was defaced with a picture of Pepe the Frog is being investigated as a hate crime. Police have said. Against who? Politicians? Old white men? Because you put a frog on the wall? Okay. DC police confirmed their investigation into the vandalism of the mural in the Navy Yard area. They said that it was not clear exactly when the mural was defaced, with a police report listing December 15th, 2020 to January 14th, 2021 as a possible time period. Okay, so here's a photo of the original mural. For those who are listening, I'll just describe it. It says, what does that say? Burn the system. It's BERN, burn the system. And it's Bernie Sanders raising a fist, the communist fist raising thing, right? And behind him, I guess, there's like a city and the mountains and a sunset. And that was the original mural as they painted it. Oh, no. Now, someone painted over Bernie Sanders' face to make Pepe the Frog after the mural was vandalized that Pepe the Frog had, which has risen the digital ranks via the alt-right as a symbol of white supremacy and white nationalist hate. I'm sorry. I'm laughing a lot. It's funny. I hope you're all having a good time, but this really is insidious, isn't it? It's a joke. It's Pepe the Frog. It doesn't mean much of anything, really. It was just someone making a joke painting Bernie Sanders' face as Pepe the Frog. How is this racist or white supremacist? You see what they're doing. I know it's funny. I know we laugh, but it really is dark. Because in the future, they're going to start going after anybody for hate crime. This is the true insidious nature of hate crime laws. And it's not just about hate crime. It's identitarianism. If they can say it's a crime based on our interpretation of what we think you think, well, that's only a matter of time before you could fart and they'll be like, you farted because you're racist. Hate crime, right? And just put that motivation on it. They say police were called to investigate the vandalism on Sunday by one of the artists who felt, quote, that the defacement may be motivated by hate or bias of political or religious affiliation. Okay. All right. Now I understand. Actually, yeah, it could be a hate crime. In D.C., their human rights law protects political ideology, interestingly. And so by painting over Bernie's face with Pepe, I guess, they're saying it's a political thing. And then it would fall under the hate crime statutes, would be investigated as such. I don't think it quite meets that threshold. I think the purpose of the law is like, if you see a guy with a MAGA hat and you hit him because he wore a MAGA hat, that would be a hate crime in D.C. They go on to claim that Pepe the Frog is all right, blah, blah, blah. Members of such groups co-opted the image. Yeah, we get it. So there's a quote here. We're going to transform this country and finally create an economy and government which works for all of us, not just the 1%. The underlying principles of our government will not be greed, hatred, and lies. This campaign will be based on economic, social, racial, and environmental justice. That's the original quote from Bernie Sanders on the wall. They say, obviously, Pepe was created in a very innocent way, says the ADL. I don't care. However, he said that the cartoon has become synonymous with the rise of the alt-right. The appropriation of that symbol, okay, yeah, I think we get it, right? And they go on to explain the origins of Pepe. My friends, this is how insane things are getting, okay? It's just a gag. That's it. There's really a news story. Why? Why am I even reading about this? Well, I'll tell you why. It's actually part of a bigger issue that's getting freaky, especially with the inauguration of Joe Biden coming soon, the woke intersectional left. Joe Biden is going to be doing the complete opposite of what Donald Trump did. You see, Donald Trump signed an executive order that stopped critical race theory in government trainings and prevented the government from signing contracts with companies that did critical race theory-based trainings. Why? Critical race theory, as we know it, is a violation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. I believe Title VII of it, which basically states you can't discriminate on the basis of, race, gender, nationality, ethnicity, etc. Doing trainings where you say that white people are this or that violates that law. So Trump said, yeah, you can't do that. Joe Biden plans to sign an executive order affirming the opposite. I imagine it will be sued immediately, but I'm not confident the Supreme Court's going to do anything because they seem to be fairly spineless. Everybody is spineless. They are such whiny, egotistical losers. All these politicians, all these Republicans, they're like, but I don't want to put myself at risk. Okay, go cry then. We need leaders in this country. We need people willing to take risks and call out the insanity. We don't have that. We do not have that. We get egotists and maniacs for the most part. People who are like, don't look at me. I'm not sticking my neck out. I want a paycheck. And there you go. Take a look at this story, and I'll show you how crazy this is getting. White is a state of mind. NYU professor is slammed for claiming black and Latino voters who supported Trump have multiracial whiteness and that it was unsettling so many voted for him. Yeah. Trump actually gained ground among Latino voters, especially in Texas, right along the border where people thought it wasn't going to happen. Serious swing from Democrat to Republican. I'll tell you why this is so insidious and how this connects with the Pepe thing being a hate crime and the absurdity of it, calling it an alt-right symbol and all that. They're saying whiteness. They are associating things they don't like with a race of people. They are psychotic, despotic identitarians. That's where we're headed. We just had MLK Day, and I love how they've appropriated everything he said, everything that we hold dear in this country now that we believe in. That one day, he says, I have a dream that my 4 little children will be judged on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And now these sick, twisted people, identitarians, are claiming Martin Luther King for their sick and disgusting ideology as they go out and then say, we must get rid of civil rights law. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get rid of it. They tried to get rid of it in California. They failed. They're trying to do it now. Daily Mail reports, an NYU professor has been slammed for claiming in a Washington Post op-ed that black and Hispanic voters supported Trump because of something called multiracial whiteness, which separates them from their own race. Not only is that racist to Latinos and black people, you're operating under the assumption they can't have their own opinions. You are taking everything you hate and you are painting it a race and then saying this race is these things. That's insane. These people are disgusting. How is this allowed? Really gross. Christina Beltran, who describes herself using the gender-neutral term Latinx, wrote last week that it was a surprise to see Latino and black faces among the MAGA mob that stormed the Capitol, and that it was also unsettling that 1/4 to 1/3 of Latino voters voted to re-elect Donald Trump. No, I think people have opinions, and I think people vote how they want to vote. She rationalized their preference for him with the idea of multiracial whiteness, which is the idea that white is more than a race or racial identity. Quote, what are we to make of Latino voters inspired by Trump? And what are we to make of unmistakably white mob violence that also includes non-white participants? I call this phenomenon multiracial whiteness. The promise that they too can lay claim to the politics of aggression, exclusion, and domination, she wrote. Isn't that exactly what they're doing? Choosing who is or isn't allowed? Well, they say they're all about inclusivity. They're not. They're not. Will they allow a white nationalist to be included in their conversations? Of course they won't. They'll punch him in the face. That's not inclusion. There you go. Now they'll argue, we're not saying inclusion of everybody. Thank you. Is exclusion of everybody then? And who does it exclude? It excludes the people you don't like, and you won't include the people you don't like either. It's the same thing. It is a political manipulation. It is propaganda. Domination. Yeah, please look in a mirror. Here's the article. It says, to understand Trump's support, we must think in terms of multiracial whiteness. And now they're trying to explain Enrique Tarrio, chairman of the Proud Boys, who is not white. She went on to claim that being white is no longer someone's racial identity, but is also a political color, which can lead to a discriminatory worldview in which feelings of freedom and belonging are produced through the persecution and dehumanization of others. The idea, she said, is rooted in white supremacy, indigenous dispossession, and anti-blackness. In the politics of multiracial whiteness, anyone can join the MAGA movement and engage in the wild freedom of unbridled rage and conspiracy theories. Look who's talking. These people really just have never encountered a mirror or a large body of water, have they? Because they certainly can't see what they look like. Multiracial whiteness offers citizens of every background the freedom to call Muslims terrorists, demand that undocumented immigrants be rounded up and deported, deride BLM as a movement of thugs and criminals, and accuse Democrats of being blood-drinking pedophiles. Excellent. Okay, that is a straw man argument. What you could really say is that the MAGA movement allows people of all different racial backgrounds to come together and be a member of the community. Wow, I'd imagine a lot of people would enjoy getting to go to dinner and hang out with people. And then they show this picture of Ali Alexander, a Stop the Steal organizer, another example given by Beltran of the unsettling number of Latino and black people who supported Trump. Why? It's remarkable. Can I judge Ali Alexander on the content of his character, please? Apparently I can't. They're literally going after a guy based on race, using racial issues. They're mad that he's a black man who supported Trump, and they call it whiteness instead of just saying, we don't like you. It's remarkable. Quote, if you want to speak Spanish and celebrate a quinceañera in your family, go ahead. If you want to be a proud boy, be a proud boy. Trump doesn't care as long as you love him. He'll love you, she said. So we have some tweets here. We got Glenn. This is funny. We got a lot of conservatives, but then we actually have Glenn Greenwald leading the pack, who is fairly progressive. Fascinating attempt to reconcile the fact that so many non-whites voted for Trump more than 2016, and that some of the key participants in the Capitol riot and related groups are non-white. Multiracial whiteness. They're white even when they're not. Yep. That's exactly how it works. So as most of you know, there was a meme for a while, because when I talk about this stuff, I usually bring up my mixed race family. And there's a reason why. If I agree with these people, they will blame whiteness and say, see, because of your family didn't get to experience the privilege of whiteness. Because I grew up on the south side of Chicago, working class family, struggling to pay the bills, losing our home to bankruptcy, things like that. And they'll say, you see how rigged the system is against people like you? And then I come out and I'm like, since then, I've lifted myself up by my bootstraps and I've started a business and I've become very successful. And they say, well, that's because you're white. Oh, right. But you see the game they're playing. What they'll say is, look who you pander to. Look at the content you make, blah, blah, blah. Tell me again about the Young Turks. I mean, Cenk Uygur is certainly successful, and he's not a white guy. What about the other people who work on the Young Turks Network who are not white? How did they succeed in their... it's because they're being lifted up by non-white voices, sure. Ben Domenech says multiracial whiteness is just another term for struggling with the fact that some of the people who disagree with you are brown. That's the only way they can do it. Ben Shapiro said, to understand Trump support, we must think in terms of hot coldness. Clever. One Twitter user said, must everything be race? Must everything go tribal? How can we win fighting each other? Washington Post panned over op-ed invoking multiracial whiteness to explain Trump support among minorities. Could it be that different people have different opinions? Could it be that you don't need to be white to actually support meritocracy? Could it be that people of all races happen to look up to Donald Trump for better or for worse? It's almost like, and hear me out here, race isn't the deterministic factor in your political ideology and your success. Gee, I wonder who preached that message. What's remarkable to me about all of these stories is that Martin Luther King, Jr. Day, just the other day, and I see all these leftists appropriating the things he said and just mangling and then mashing it up with their sick, twisted identitarian ideology. The closest thing we have right now in this country, in the actual political space, to white supremacy is not actually white supremacists. Why? Well, the Republicans got rid of those people, and Twitter and Facebook banned most of those people a long time ago, a couple of years ago, actually. The alt-right got purged. Most of them have been banned, not all of them. But they're not particularly active in politics these days. You had Steve King, who made a statement about white nationalism, and then he was removed from all committees and then primaried, and then he lost. Now, I'll tell you the closest thing we have to it is identitarianism. You see, identitarianism is this idea that government should be that laws and systems of government will be based upon your identity, which includes race, gender, identity, etc. So you have right now on the left an overt demand for identitarianism. And on the right, you have an overt rejection of it, be it from the left or the right. Now, there have been attempts at white nationalism and right-wing identitarianism, which typically is white nationalism, not for the most part, but kind of is. And it's failed and been kicked aside because the Republicans don't want that. That's why you end up with people like Glenn Greenwald or me or people like Mike Tracy, for instance, who reject the critical race wokeness. Now, I will say there are some journalists who are like liberals who call this out, who still pretend like it's not a threat. And it's only gotten worse and likely only will get worse because Joe Biden's going to be signing some ridiculous, executive order about affirming racial equity in the government and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons I voted for Donald Trump, because he did the opposite. He kicked that out. I know firsthand from my experience of what it's like to deal with racists on both the left and the right. And I'm not saying the left and the right are racist. I'm saying there are racists in both sides. The left is overwhelmingly racist. I was at Occupy Wall Street. I got to experience the sick, twisted ideology of their racist perversions as they enacted rules and laws separating people based on race. They created voting blocks. They were all race groups. They are psychopaths. They are racist, supremacist psychopaths. Of course, the people who segregated everybody at Occupy Wall Street were white people. Isn't that funny? They're the ones who point the finger at you and call you a white supremacist when you're the one saying, I don't want none of that. They're the ones segregating everyone based on race and then claiming white people are the racists. Have they looked in a mirror? And that's part of my point, too. John Lott on Twitter said, how does anyone take WAPO seriously when they run articles like this? So the blacks and Hispanics support Trump are white supremacists, too? It is a manipulation. It is propaganda. The goal is to take something everyone hates, white supremacy, and then turn anybody. They need to justify calling everybody a white supremacist. It is how they make their boogeyman. What was that? You don't want to pay taxes? White supremacy. What's that? You think you have a right to free speech? White supremacy. That way, what they'll do is they change the definition. Then when you, a regular person, maybe you're black, come out and say, I believe in free speech, someone will write an article saying an avowed white supremacist. Then Wikipedia will take the article and they will write, so-and-so is an avowed white supremacist. That's how the game works. They're destroying language so that no one can understand what's actually going on. They go on to mention that people picked it up on Twitter and we're talking about it, which we read. They say Ben Domenech, the co-founder and publisher of The Federalist, tweeted multiracial whiteness, another term for, trying to justify why the people who disagree with you are brown. Here we have this graph, how Latino and Asian voting changed between 2016 and 2020. In LA, massive jump for Donald Trump. This is amazing. In San Jose, in many places where you didn't think it would happen. I guess support for Democrats dropped for Joe Biden went way down in Philadelphia. They go on to say some said they felt taken for granted by Democrats. Others, like history professor Geraldo L. Cadava, have explained that there is no such thing as the Latino vote because Latino voters differ in background so much. In a November 9th article for The Atlantic, Cadava wrote, Latinos are not a uniform voting bloc. We are spread across the country and have wildly different backgrounds. It's remarkable, isn't it? Do you think people in Florida who fled Venezuela and Cuba are going to vote for socialism? You were wrong. There was one district, I think maybe it was a 22nd, I'm not sure, which was considered to be safe Democrat by all the polls, and it flipped Republican, shocking many people. Why? Because these people understood completely what was going on in their home countries and why they left, and they sure as hell would not vote for it here. We saw in southern Texas on the border, blue areas that were blue because of Latinos turned red. But there are also Latinos in cities like Chicago and in California who still overwhelmingly, or I should say still very much so, vote Democrat. It's not the same thing. A Latino who lives in Chicago is not going to have the same experiences on average to someone who fled Cuba. They're going to be very, very different. They say over the years, Latinos ourselves have struggled to articulate what unites and divides us. We are so diverse that we often say the Latino vote doesn't really exist. And that, I think, is fair to say. I'm not surprised to see the expansion of the absurdities. We're starting to leave the political realm now that the elections are over, which means we're going to go through another year of cultural debate and some politics. And then so that's 2021. And then 2022 is going to be all politics again. They say that the Republicans will reclaim the House in 2022 due to typical political cycles. You see, what happens is the Democrats will gain power, go nuts. People will react and say, and then vote for Republicans. And then the Republicans will get power, go nuts. And the Democrats will go, and then vote for Democrats. Or the middle of the road voters will switch back and forth. This year is going to be very heavy on cultural politics, I bet. I'm telling you. The people who want to talk about, Trump and Trumpism are going to have to find reasons to do so. But because there's no big election cycle, they're going to start shifting into movies and games once again. And it's really simple. This story about Pepe the Frog, it's ridiculous. It's nothing. It's a frog picture. It's nothing. But the media, the artists need something to shock you. And so they find the most abhorrent things, racism, and they slap that sticker on it. Got your attention now, they ask? That's the plan. If they just said someone, defiled our painting of Bernie, people would be like, so what? Okay, it's graffiti. Grow up. Well, can we call it a hate crime? Oh, there you go. Now you get a headline. That's what they do. I think it's true for how this all started, the culture war with things like Gamergate. If a video game comes out, you write your guide, you write about speed runs and developments and updates, but you don't have recurring news every day. So what do? You need to find something to write about every day to justify your job. So they found politics and cultural issues. And that's why many of these stories were nonsensical, like complaining about stupid nonsense, just because they needed something to be mad at. Otherwise, no one's going to click the articles. There you go. We'll see what Joe Biden does his first day in office. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out. Check out my other channel, and I will see you all then.